Well, hello there again, friends. Today is 10/30/2022, and today is Odin Project Vlog Day 159. And I am on part 2 of the Project CV application for React. And I have on the screen here what I've been kind of working on in the last video. We're continuing on with it using the Thinking in React doc that I linked in the last video notes. And I'll do that as well in this video. Today is the next day, Sunday, so just to give you guys a precursor, I was able to, you know how sometimes you get in the flow state and you don't want to get out of it, mentally wise, when you're working on your project. I was in my flow state yesterday, so I just kept working after I uploaded that other video and got pretty far actually. I got through step 3 of this document and step 4 initially, so we'll go through that. But yeah, I wanted to put another video out today just to catch you guys up on what I've been working on, and still letting you know that I start my on-call week tomorrow from Monday to Monday. So it's a big question mark on whether I'll get to work on anything or if I'll get any videos out in the next week or so. So I wanted to at least have this documented out there for my reference in case I have a long on-call week. I can reference this when I come back to the project. But anyway, neither here nor there. Let's get started. So step 3 is all about identifying the minimal but complete set representation of UI state. So I went through and basically this section has you go through the exercise identifying what is state and what is props. So they say a lot of new beginners with React tend to mess this one up as far as what state and what is props, and so they want you to kind of identify what your state is, and they give you some questions. And so based on what they're asking, essentially they have some questions that they're asking here, and they say, is it passed from a parent via prop? If so, it probably isn't state. Does it remain unchanged over time? If so, it probably isn't state. Can you compute it based on any other state or props in your component? If so, it isn't state. So they want you to narrow down to a couple, and anything that can filter through all 3 of those questions can be state. So originally I was thinking, I'm like, okay, well, general info, educational info, and experience info are probably not state because we're inputting data and we're passing it through, and it's coming down and being fed into we're being manipulated via the buttons here, which is the buttons component, and the display div the display CV component will be displaying the content. So in my mind, I thought state was either going to be or my buttons component and my display CV component. Since these are more input fields, I thought that of them more as props that are going to be passed in from the user. Seems reasonable, right? So I came down to buttons or display CV, and the question. Sorry, I'm bouncing all over the place here. So the question in step 4 is identifying which state you should put it in, where your state should live. So basically they're saying, in a nutshell, without reading all that, it says this is often the most challenging part for newcomers to understand because, and they're talking about the data flow of parent to child and relationship and how that works. So basically they're saying is the higher of the 2 in the child-parent relationship should be normally where your state will live. Excuse me. So I decided, earlier I said buttons or display CV. So obviously buttons is higher up on my parent chain. So I decided buttons, and I wrote that down in my template or my notepad that buttons is where the component where my state will live. So I started writing some of this out and quickly realized that was not going to work. So this example in its own right is correct, but it's not they're not in their example. They're not creating an input form. If you remember from last video, they're just building out a search box essentially, with one entry that the user enters, and then it filters pre-existing data. There is no actual input of data. So I found out through a lot of research, probably like an hour's worth of research on the web, that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there is zero way to have input fields not be state and only be props. It doesn't matter whether you're doing components or class components or functional components. You cannot have input data in React that's not state. That doesn't start out as state and passed along as a prop. I will say that. So once I figured that out and gave up trying to just use them as props, each one of these is a state. So each field is a state. So the info section, general info component is stateful. Educational info stateful, and experience info section, they're all stateful. So I'm gonna go ahead and quit yapping now. I've kind of preluded that. Sorry for all the long chat, not a lot of code yet, but I wanted to kind of preface that to let you guys know my thought process. So basically these are all stateful, and then that's where I ended it. The submit CV, it just does refreshes right now because I don't have prevent default enabled. So basically what I wanted to do for this video, what I accomplished yesterday, is I wanted to get the complete data flow going down the chain from parent to child, with the state being created and then it being handed off to the next section as a prop, state, prop, etc., all the way down to display div, where I need to be able to house all the HTML on the output. So that's exactly what happened. So here's app.js, the top parent. Nothing's changed here from the last video, so I won't really go over anything there. Again, this stuff will change as I move along in the project, but my goal again today was just to get the data flow correct, get things to correctly flow down to child relationships, and to display out on the DisplayCV component, as you'll see. So starting out in general info. So again, like I said, each one has state. This doesn't have any props going into it because there's no props being passed and no state in app.js, which is its parent. So we have this.state equals GI section, and then basically blank entries. This is basically just to define the properties of pname, email, and phone for GI section for state. And then I have a handle change, so it's going to set the state. And what this does here is, I found this on the internet. This is very unique. I like it. So instead of having to go through each, and since I have multiple variables and value names and going on here inside of this render, in this one I have 1, 2, and 3. I have pname, email, and phone. I could write set states for each handle change and have it like handle change name, handle change email, handle change phone, but that doesn't really make sense. So I found a nice shortcut way to do it. If you do e.target.id in brackets, what this will do will it'll accept anything that's in the for my case, the ID field that I described. It won't work if you don't have ID field. You could use name if you had a name field, but I have ID. So it'll input whatever it'll take in whatever input the ID is, and then it will set the state with the eTarget.value of whatever it is whatever input you're in for the user. So in this case, for pname, pname is going to be the e.target.value, which should be this right here. So it's calling this.pname. So basically, this is whatever the user is currently typing in. That will be pname, and that will be targeting the e.target.value and will become pname. And then that sets that via this .setState, and then setState will, as you remember from previous lessons, will rerun the render, and that will set that as pname. So that's how that works, and so that universal line of code there works for all the 3 inputs on my render for my return. So see, I got name, email, phone. We went over this in the last video, so I won't go over it in greater detail. I did comment out the requireds just to make the so it's not required. So it made me entering information a little bit smoother and easier to do. While I was testing, I will uncomment those when I'm all done. So when you come down here, so then that and then in turn obviously sets the state. So we have handle change handling all the set states. So when the user enters all the information and it's ready to go on to the next section, we call edu info like we had before, but in the addition here is this right here. So I added a GI section equals this.state. So this.state will be whatever, since this is the current state of GI section, we just simply call this.state. So it's going to add all that stateful information into GI section, which will be passed to edu info. And then I go down to edu info. Some of the stuff's going to be repetitive, so I'll explain this edu info, and then I'll probably just kind of blow over these real quick here, so the video isn't too repetitive. But anyway, we are passing in props on edu info because what we're doing here in general info is passing in state. But if you remember, you can't pass state, so GI section in this instance we're calling it state from here, from its current general info component, but GI section going over to edu info, it has to be props because you can't pass state. So props will be right here, so constructor and super props here, and then we're going to have its own, this edu info component is going to have its own state, and it's going to be called edu section with school name, major, and grad date. Same format as the previous class general info. Same concept, exact same code for handle change. And render is going to be very, very similar what I just described. So for educational, we'll have school name, major, grad date, and that's going to be handling the change as well, setting the state, manipulating the state, changing it via the handle change method. And then down here, it's important to note I actually tested this and it does not work. So even though I'm not using, actually I'll hang on to that thought. So here we're passing in GI section. Now this is going to be props. Even though we didn't use it here, it's going to be this.props.gi section. You have to put that in there because we have to pass through the props to the next, I will say that, to the next child component. If I left this section out right here, the subsequent children class components will not get the props for GI section. It just breaks. It doesn't pass through. It doesn't know what to pass through. It doesn't see it passing through, so it just ignores it. So you have to have that in there, even though I'm not using it in this particular module. I still have to pass it along. So you'll see that my props will grow as we go along here down the cascade. So, and then edu section here is the same as before. Since we are calling it and creating it in this module or in this component, we have to use this .state for edu section, passing that along. Coming down to experience info, same thing. We're passing in props now for constructor and super. Setting that state for exp section for getting those initial variables and properties set up for company name, title, job duty, start date, end date. Handle change is the same. Same as before. The render is exactly the same, except we have different variables. And looks like I gotta make a change here. My values are commented out on this one for some reason. Alright, so I'll come back and do that after the video. But anyway, so down here, GI section, so you see there's some duplication. I did test this out. So if you delete this and save it and try to run it, you will get a buttons, which is then, or DisplayCV, which is then trying to call GI section via props. You'll get an error message saying undefined or null. Because GI section is not here because we removed it if we were to remove it. So you have to pass it along to all the children individually. So it's kind of a pain in the butt, but I haven't found a way around that. If you do, let me know in the comments, but at least the way I have this architectured, I have to pass it along each one. So again, edu stay here, so now we're passing this as a prop. So we're passing this .props.edu section, and since we're in exp section, we're going to call and pass the state of it as exp section down to buttons. So when we get to buttons, well, my VM is acting funny. So we get to buttons here. We have DisplayCV. There's the props for GI section, the props for edu section, and the props for exp section being passed along. Right now, buttons doesn't really do anything. In fact, doesn't do anything at all. I haven't gotten that far yet. That will be for the next video. I'm just trying to make sure that like again, I've said it a couple times, making sure that my parent-child relationships are good and that my props and state are flowing as I need them to. So we get down to the last one, a DisplayCV. This one just looks ugly because passing in the props here, it looks ugly on the return here because this is not going to stay. I'm just using this for testing purposes. So basically, as you can see here, I'm outputting all props for GI sections, so all properties for property values for GI section, all property values for educational section, and all property values for the experience section. And that should be 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep. So 11 there, and that's, again, this isn't staying because we're going to have the submit button do this work. But for right now, since I don't have that working, I just shortcutted it this way just so I know that the data is flowing down correctly. And so hitting the browser here, I'll just throw some stuff in here so you can see that it's flowing down and working. I'm just putting in some random information here so you guys can see. Sorry, my job. Oh, just being silly. I just want to get some information here. I just reset it. I knew as soon as I clicked that, was like, why did I do that? Okay. So, blah, blah, blah. I shouldn't have hit that button. So as you can see, everything's populating down here just fine. Yeah, it's just a bunch of junk, but you can see it's coming over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So all the H1s are populating through. The data is correct, as you can see. If I close the dev tools here, you can see that more clear there. All the dates are coming over correctly. Everything's looking good. If we go to components for React here, it's kind of cool if you can follow the bread trail here. So here's our state inside of general info. And so when we go to edu info, see that converts to props. So we have email, pname, phone as props now in the state here. We're activating the state with the information here for grad date, major, school. And then you go to button and you see all the props are just continuing to come along like we want to. There is no state for button right now because button's not actually doing anything because I haven't coded it yet, but it will have its own information here shortly in the next video probably. And then displayed CV is the last one here, and of course it has all three section, edu section, or components for props, component for experience, component for the general information section, and it even tells you what it's rendered by. So basically this last child is rendered by all the above parents, which we want to see, and it's created by root and the React DOM for the backend stuff. So yeah, so that's pretty cool. Just wanted to show you that and how that all flows. So it took me quite a while to get this to work right. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but there's quite a bit going on here. So I have basically rounded out step 4 here of where state should live, and then step 5 is inverse. So basically, if you haven't figured out, the answer for step 4, since we're using a peer-based CV form, um, our state really lives everywhere. Unless you guys have a better answer to that, I have to have state living in each of these sections in order for this to flow down. The only, ironically, the one I thought was going to have all the state, actually currently it may change, but currently doesn't have any state in it at all. The buttons, the buttons don't have, the buttons component doesn't have any state in it. It's stateless. So that's actually ironic now that I think about it. But so yeah, so. And then, of course, DisplayCV component doesn't have any state either. It's just writing out the props, but to the screen. So yeah, so that kind of answers that. And then, so right now, state kind of lives everywhere. There is no single source of truth, as you would like to hope. So again, I'm not saying this is the only way. Not saying it's the best way. It's just the way that I'm doing it. So. We'll go into step 5 next time, and if I need to, adding inverse flow, read through that to make sure that applies. If not, I will start working on the button in buttons and trying to figure out how to get that captured automatically, so I'm not printing to the screen like this. I want this to be set in an array probably, or an object of some sort, so when I hit the submit CV, everything will populate down here. Maybe not exactly like this, but it'll populate down here. Is my thought. So anyway, I will quit babbling. Thank you for coming on the ride today. A little bit longer video, but I appreciate all you guys and all the new subscribers. Welcome. I enjoy having and love each and every one of you. Thanks for being engaging in the content. Please like, share, and subscribe for more content. And let me know in the comments section how you guys are doing with your first full-fledged React app here and how you're coming along with it. So with all that said, guys, until next time, see ya!